Hi, Leanne Bridges here. I wanted to share a little story that I thought about with you today in light of all that's happening in the world and some of the challenges we see on the global stage. Imagine, if you will, that there was a little boy that went to school and inadvertently he did something that angered some other kids. Maybe he sat in their place at lunch or did something in class that they didn't like. And imagine that these other boys maybe were stronger and bigger and more powerful, and they didn't like what he did, and they decided to show him and teach him a lesson. Maybe they bullied him a bit or said things to him. And imagine the little boy feeling so distraught and maybe helpless that he thought of ideas to pranks that he could do to actually try to get back at them, to try to gain that sense of power again. So maybe he put something in their lunch or some sort of trick. And that only served to anger the bigger kids even more. And so they retaliated again. And again, the little boy tried to do things. And it started to escalate to the point where the bigger boys decided they started to pick on his little sister. Well, that really angered the little boy so much that he got his family involved and he got his parents and so forth. And from there, the parents went to the bigger kids' families and said that they weren't happy with what was happening. And the bigger boys' families, instead of understanding, they reacted with anger as well and said, well, your kid did things to my kid and so forth. And so the anger grew, and it continued to play out on the playground to the point where the bigger kids got more and more angry, and they actually beat the kid to death at some point. Can you imagine what would happen with the little boy's family and the anger and the frustration and this grief that they felt? And that father decided that he would seek justice for his son. He would do whatever it takes to get revenge. And so he sought that. And in so doing, he did unspeakable things. And when the society saw what he did and what the families of the bigger kids saw and their friends, they also sought revenge for their son and the things that had happened to their family as a result of this father. And so the escalation continued, and you can imagine the families grew. They started to fortify their homes. They didn't feel safe in their homes. They decided to get guns and so forth. It continued. And war started raging out between communities and tribes. And then there was one person in the community. It could be either of the communities, but imagine that it was in the one with the bigger, more powerful families. And one person decided, instead of continuing with the crowd to get anger and hatred towards the less powerful families, he decided to think about it and to look at it from a different perspective, maybe from one of understanding, to understand where this father came from. Because when we looked at what he'd done in isolation, people said it was pure evil. But when the person decided to look more deeply, saw and understood what had led up to his unspeakable evil, and that it wasn't really that, but really an escalation of events. And what if this same person started to open his heart and started to talk to other people and convince them that maybe there was a better way than continuing the violence? And maybe through that community, the more powerful community, decided to hand an olive branch out to the less powerful families and communities. And they sought understanding and forgiveness and peace. And they realized that those families were the same as their own, that they weren't any different, that they weren't pure evil, but really were looking for peace and security and happiness. And they were very much the same. Imagine how one person changing their own thoughts can have an impact on a community and on a situation like that. And it doesn't have to come from the most powerful side. It can come from the less powerful as well. But it just takes one, as we've learned from the teachings of Gandhi. So when I look at what's happening on the world stage, and I look at ISIS, and I try to understand on a deeper level the years, the decades, even the potential hundreds of years that led up to through families and tribes and so forth. I don't look at them as pure evil. I look at them as somebody we need to understand and to try to come to some level of understanding and compassion and forgiveness. And that's really the only way that's going to stop this escalation. So that is my thought for today. If you have any comments, I'd really welcome them, and look forward to some more chats in the future. Namaste.